All good. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the special meeting of the Madera County Board of Supervisors. It is Monday, June 9th, 9 o'clock. We will call this meeting to order. We will start with the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Supervisor Rogers will lead us in the invocation, and I'll ask Supervisor Hoythris to lead us in the pledge.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your goodness, your mercy, your peace. We ask your blessings upon these proceedings, that your will would be done in our lives, that you guide us and direct us. Give us wisdom that we might be able to discern what is good and right. We thank you for our nation, blessings upon it. We ask for peace, prosperity, and bless our military men and women, our law enforcement, as they try to protect our country and do what we cannot do for ourselves. Just give them comfort and strength and peace as they serve us and you. We thank you for your many blessings upon our country, and long may our flag wave as a beacon of hope and citadel of freedom for the whole world. In Jesus' name, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is public comment. The first 15 minutes of each regular session are set aside for members of the public to address the board on any matter under the jurisdiction of the board, but not appearing on the agenda. The board will not take action on any items presented under public comment. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Anyone addressing the board is asked to print their name clearly on the speaker sheet at the podium and state their name and county of residence for the record. Any public comment? Do we have any online?
None online. Oh, excuse me, we have one. Go ahead, Dan.
Okay, just a protocol question about the procedure today. I have some comments on one segment of the special revenue budget and curious when would it be appropriate for me to speak on that issue?
Supervisor, I'll take that question. Dan, Joel Begay, County Administrative Office. We will introduce the special revenue budgets at the end of the general fund and the end of the main county budget. And I believe that would be probably the appropriate time to ask questions for those.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I will close public comment and get into our 9 a.m. hearing. Item 3A.
County Administration Department, Administrative Officers Overview and Presentation of the 2025-2026 Proposed County Budget and Special Revenue Budgets with direction as needed.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Jay Varney, Madera County CAO. Joel will be giving you a fairly detailed PowerPoint presentation shortly. I just want to run briefly through the letter that's attached to the front of your budget. The proposed operating budget is $578,436,287, which reflects an increase of just a touch over $47 million across all operating funds for the county. Throughout this budget year, as you're aware from the multiple times we've brought it as an agenda item, we've made significant progress towards trying to reduce the deficit in this budget. However, financial challenges from previously, inflation, labor market competitiveness, and revenue that is growing but at a very much diminished rate compared to some years past, makes this a particularly challenging time to ensure that there's sufficient funding to address the growth of county discretionary revenues versus net county costs. As Joel will note, the revenues we project are going to be just a touch over $108 million this year, an increase of 5.1 million or 4.6% over the current year estimated revenues. However, we have a fairly flat to pessimistic outlook on revenue growth in the years coming, especially in the areas of sales tax, in the areas of property tax, while the residential boom, so to speak, in the Rio Mesa area has certainly brought additional tax revenues. We're also facing certainly declining agricultural property rates, and that brings what could have been more of a bonanza in increase of property tax down to a much more modest increase. In terms of your position allocations, there's recommended currently funded 1,754 3/4, which is a net decrease of 22 1/4 funded positions. We actually unfunded a total of 41 positions to meet the net county costs, and some of those positions were picked up either through subvented funding or grant funding options. So the net decrease in positions is 22 1/4. As a result of that, no layoffs will be triggered, and all of the positions recommended for unfunding are currently vacant. The charts that are in the letter on page 3 are also going to be included in Joel's PowerPoint. Already discussed discretionary revenues. On page small letter, Roman letter 5, we have taken a number of steps, as you're aware of, throughout the year to cut costs and to implement hiring freezes, look at implementing services through third parties, and consolidation of departments in the hopes of cutting costs. Page 6 is a specific slide in the PowerPoint, so we'll wait until the PowerPoint comes up. Page 7 is a overview of the proposed appropriations, and it has the anticipated increases or decreases. As the board's priority has been public safety, probably for at least the last 10 years, we continue to do that in a fairly strong fashion, allocating 73% of the discretionary funding to public safety functions. The next page is a bar graph, which is also included in Joel's presentation, so we'll wait and allow you to go over it at that time in case you have any questions. So the bottom line here is we're still going to come out with a budget deficit just a hair over $1 million. We think that almost $750,000 of that is going to have to come out of the fund balance, which is going to leave you with a very slight fund balance at the end. And rather than getting into an extended discussion on the LATCF, the local agency and tribal consistency funding of $4 million that we have, Joel has prepared some explanatory slides in his presentation on that for the board's review and discussion, and that ends my introduction of Joel's slides.
Thank you, Jay.
Jay, Joel Begay, County Admin Office. I will give you a few more details, but before we move forward, just kind of want to address the board and the public on what to expect today. We've concluded opening remarks from the CEO and the board. Introduce revised pages. I believe this year we do not have revised pages, so we're just going to take pride in that. Overview of the 2025 CAO budget is the item we are in now. At the end of this, there'll be discussion on the county budget. We do have a 1 p.m. hearing on the special districts budgets, and until both hearings are concluded, we won't be adopting all budgets. So
Thank you, Joel. I'll just chime in real quick. I just want to start with thanking administration and all the departments for this process. I know that you guys have been working on your budget submittals for a couple of months now. And so just the feedback that I got from the department heads was that this process was fair and that their dealings with administration were pleasant. So I just want to thank you all for doing that, and for those of you who are here for taking the time to be here this morning. Anyone else would you like to say anything before we get started? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. And just to kind of like piggyback on that, your discretionary revenue funded departments reduced their net county costs collectively by 3 million. Even though the net decrease is not that, there's some offsets. That is a huge accomplishment and a testament to how cooperative the relationship has been these past few months. So I just want to underscore that from our side as well. As Jay had mentioned, the increase in all of the county's funds, including the general fund, is just over $47 million. 21.6 million is the increase in the general fund. I do want to highlight that 16 million of that is in subvented departments. So majority of that, and a lot of it has to do with contracted services for mental health, tweaking positions so that they can provide more in-house services. So even though it's a staggering amount, a lot of that is subvented dollars. There are discretionary expenditures that have to increase. The biggest single year increase we had probably is in retiree health. And then there are timing differences for revenues for some general government operations that contribute to the increase because we don't get the revenue in the same fiscal year. So I kind of want to highlight that, especially for the public, that if we're in a deficit, we're increasing to 21, a lot of that isn't in discretionary revenues. As Jay mentioned, total funded position is 1,754.75. It is a net decrease of 22.25 positions. But like Jay mentioned, discretionary revenue funded departments reduced a total of 41 positions. 24 of those positions are in the sheriff's office alone, between the jail and the sheriff operations. Budgeted net county cost decreased by 427,000. If you recall, in prior years, that's been steadily increasing to keep up with inflation. We are in a position where we're decreasing resources, so net county costs this year is decreasing, which then allows our discretionary revenue to eat away at that operating deficit that we've had the past few years. Highlighting some significant increases that offset some of the savings that we've made. Retiree health premiums increased 1.1 million year over year. To touch a little bit on that, it has everything to do with the Inflation Reduction Act, where prescription drug modifications increased Medicare premiums that we pay by 29% year over year. For reference, healthcare premiums increased 6 or 7%. That's where we're budgeted and we're on track. But those amendments to the retiree health on the national level did increase our premiums by 29%. CAL FIRE cooperative agreement, 700,000 increase, or almost a 700,000 increase. It's not a real increase. In the current year, we benefited from a one-time infusion from the state for CAL FIRE benefits, which had the effect of lowering what they charge cooperative agreements up and down the state. So now we're reverting back to where the cost should have been. That's why it's coming up as an increase for this year's budget. And then, like I mentioned, timing differences for election-related reimbursement. It's at least $500,000. We don't get it until 12 to 18 months out, depending on our elections department submits it timely. It's just more on a flow basis on elections. What does that do to the deficit? So based on our current year-end projections, we anticipate that our deficit for this current fiscal year is just under 3 million, 2.9 million. If you recall, we adopted a budget with a 6.8 million deficit. Between efficiencies gained by our departments, between the selective hiring freeze that was implemented for those 12 months, that deficit has been reduced to 2.9. For next year, we project a deficit. The proposed budget reflects an operating deficit of 1.2 million. However, we know that despite the reduced staffing, we're still going to incur salary savings. We are anticipating a very conservative 1% salary savings, which is a 1/4 of what our normal would be. We are taking into account that we're retaining employees, people are staying in their jobs, and we're not churning as much positions as we want. So we don't want to overproject the salary savings. We're keeping it at 1%. If that projection materializes, our projected year-end deficit is 748,000. We began the year with just over $1 million in our fund balance reserve. We will end the year, if these projections stay true, with only 319,000 in fund balance reserve at the end of this proposed budget year. I do want to note that the county, and I'll cover it in a later slide, that the county is in possession of just over $4 million worth of LATCF funding, which is flexible funding that the county can use on any government operations. It is available to offset any deficit. We'll probably have recommendations at the end of this presentation, but again, we're not making any recommendations right now. You've seen this slide before, just to illustrate how much of the over $500 million county budget the board really has true discretion over, right? Or 100% discretion over, and it's 19% of that budget. And the reason being is a lot of the budget is governed by either state or federal regulations, what we call subvented funding. Majority of this are public assistance, health and mental health. The way it works in California is it is a state program, county administered. So we go by state regulations and we have to follow them. Of the discretionary revenue, majority of that is spent on public protection, 73%. That is a 1% decrease from the prior year, going from 74% to 73%. And a lot of it has to do with the unfunding of positions that are recommended. With the remaining cut of the discretionary revenue, the next biggest cut is in the general government. This is your any non-public safety, general fund, public service that we provide. That's about 21.3%. Library services at 2%. And then the 3.6% of that is public assistance, which represents the county share for those public assistance programs. This is a graph that just kind of illustrates for the past 4 fiscal years the trend between the between the categories of expenditure. I want to point out that the increase in the general government of 2.4 million, 1.1 million of that is just the retiree health program alone, and the premiums. And then a good chunk of that is the timing difference of the elections revenue. And then another in here, and probably the interplay between the cost plan revenues that the subventeds provide, which offsets general government. So we started moving into more direct billing. So what we get in the cost plan 2 years down the road is decreasing because we're getting them up front. So once that decreases, the offsets to general fund decreases, so it results in an increased expenditure that's presented in this graph. The police protection and detention correction shows a decrease because a lot of the unfunded positions have come from those operations. I do want to note that we have had extensive meetings with the sheriff's office staff. Even though there's a significant number of positions being unfunded, like Jay mentioned, some key programs are being converted into subvented funding through collaboration with mental health. But some of the other positions have been vacant and are not really filled right now, and in the projections, due to difficulty in recruiting, would likely remain vacant, so they're being unfunded. And the reason I point that out is, and I don't mean to take it lightly, it's going to be a challenge for our public safety departments, but it doesn't mean they're going to have less bodies filled as of today going forward. It just means they have to maintain the bodies they have right now. It doesn't get them where they need to be, but it gets them where they are right now. Just a couple of general comments. The 1.2 operating deficit, although we get the seriousness of it, our work is not done, it is significant progress from adopting a 6.8 million deficit in the 24-25 fiscal year. So I kind of want to highlight that, not patting anybody on the back. It's just that we've made progress. The 41 discretionary levy positions were unfunded to achieve this. With our revenue projections, it is unlikely that we can restore these 41 anytime soon. In fact, if revenues don't grow as much as our expenditures and we don't make enough efficiencies or cuts in other areas, those likely would have to be made up by unfunding additional positions beyond the budget year. The projected fund balance reserve would be at 319,000, which too low for our comfort. The only other revenues available to plug any deficit would be the LATCF funding, which gonna go over what LATCF funding is a little bit. LATCF funding was authorized under the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. It was given to local agencies and tribal governments. We received 4.1 million of LATCF funds. The only expenditure that we have recommended from the board and the board has made on that fund is a collaboration with CSAC for rural areas related to the forest. That's $30,000, I think. NACO, I'm sorry, NACO. But these funds can be used for any governmental purpose other than a lobbying activity. So it could be used for maintaining or expanding public services, such as public safety, health, education, and housing. It can be used for infrastructure, such as roads and bridges, water infrastructure, that facilitate economic development or improve health outcomes, or facilitate transition to clean energy, or it can be used to expand government capacity through workforce or technology. So other than the lobbying activity, it can fund anything that discretionary revenues would normally fund. Like we mentioned, we will need to continue the hiring freeze so the positions are filled strategically and in alignment with what we project, our quarterly projection of revenues are. And then we will continue working with each department head to further improve efficiencies, to figure out if any reorganizations, consolidation of services could leverage third-party revenue or reduce cost overall for the county. That concludes our general comments for now. I'm going to pause for any questions from the board and the public. From the board, sorry.
Any questions from the board? Comments? Supervisor Wamhop.
Yes, and the reason we don't include LATCF in our fund balance is because of those minor strings regarding lobbying efforts, or is there a broader reason why we don't include the LATCF?
Yes, Supervisor. I think you could. The reason it's not right now is by those regulations that came with it, it's categorized as a special revenue fund. And in special revenue funds, it goes with realignment, like realignment is a special revenue fund. In fact, LATCF is in the small binder as a special revenue fund. It could be recognized as part of the fund balance reserve if we utilize it to offset government services in lieu of discretionary revenue, meaning we will use less taxes the year we use the LATCF, which then would swap it for, then those revenues go into the fund balance reserve.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Supervisor Rogers.
Yeah, I don't mind it being a separate revenue category. I think we've had this discussion before, and in that discussion, I said that it should be brought forward as a reserve. I don't mind it being in a separate category. What I do mind is it not being discussed, and I appreciate it being discussed today. That is transparency. That is important, and so that's very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, proceed.
Thank you. Right, we would like to begin by introducing each budget for the board's consideration, beginning with the public safety budget. The first public safety budget recommended for your consideration is the child support services budget, which begins on page 1 of the budget binder. Total recommended expenditures of $4,923,752 represent an increase of $173,941 over the current fiscal year, mainly due to the projected staffing costs for the child support department. This budget reflects 40 funded positions, which is at the same level as the current fiscal year. Sarah Honeycutt, Director of Child Support Services, is available for it.
I see none. We'll move on.
The next group of budgets for your consideration are the district attorney budgets, which begin on page 9 of the budget book. The total CAO recommended expenditures of $9,361,263 represent an increase of 444,223 over the current fiscal year based on projected current staffing costs. The department requested budget reflects 50 funded positions, a net decrease of 1.5 positions from the current fiscal year. District Attorney Sally Moreno is available for any questions.
Questions from the board? Seeing none, we'll move on unless you have comments. Yep. Thank you.
The next departmental budgets for your consideration are the Sheriff's Office budgets, which also includes the budgets for the Sheriff's Law Enforcement Divisions and the Sheriff's Office Jail Division. The Sheriff budgets begin on page 45 of the budget book. The total recommended expenditures for Sheriff Law Enforcement budget works is 38,057,129, which represents a decrease of 2,005,963 from the current fiscal year. The budget reflects 168 funded positions, a decrease of 9 positions from the current fiscal year, which was done to stay within the available net county cost fund. The total recommended expenditures for the Sheriff Jail Division is 25,230,769, which represents a 186,949 decrease from the current fiscal year. The jail budget reflects 109 funded positions, a decrease of 14 positions from the current fiscal year, which was also done to stay within the net county cost. Sheriff Command staff are available for any questions you may have on the Sheriff Office budgets.
No, moving on.
Right. The next group of departmental budgets for your consideration are the Probation Department budgets, which begins with the Juvenile Hall budget found on page 187 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of 35,574,330 represent a decrease of 828,422 from the current fiscal year due to budgetary limitations. Recommended positions of 143.5 FTEs reflect a net decrease of 1, with several general fund positions also being shifted to grant-funded operations so that the department may stay within the available net county cost. Chris Childress, Chief Probation Officer, is available for any questions you may have on this budget. The next set of budgets for your consideration are the Fire Department budgets, which begin on page 255 of the budget book. The Fire Department has 4 separate budget orgs, which includes the Main County Fire Department, Station 8, Riverstone, and Tesoro Viejo. There are a total of 5 positions allocated to this budget, which reflect a decrease of 1 position in order to stay within the available net county cost. These county-funded positions provide accounting and office support and heavy mechanic support for the county firefighters that are contracted with CAL FIRE. The Main County Fire Department budget includes the funding for all county fire stations, including those stations in the Amador plan. The total CAO recommended budget for the fire department is 16,762,952, which is an increase of 1,495,111 over the current fiscal year, primarily due to a one-time reduction in the CAL FIRE contract that was taken in the current fiscal year. Justin McComb, CAL FIRE Chief, and CAO staff are available for any questions.
Seeing none, we'll move on.
The next budget for your consideration is the Agricultural Commission's budget, which includes the budget for predatory animal control and begins on page 281 of the budget book. The total recommended budget of $2,670,663 represent a decrease of $61,873 from the current fiscal year. This budget has 18 allocated positions, of which 2 are unfunded and reflects the same number of total allocated positions as the prior year. Rusty Landsberger, Ag Commissioner, is available for any questions.
Thank you.
The next budget for your consideration is the Community and Economic Development Planning Division budget, which begins on page 293. The recommended budget for the Planning Division is $7,070,013, which represents a $1,047,049 increase over the current fiscal year and is primarily due to the cost of professional and specialized services for contracts with consultants for grants and special projects. The department has 17 allocated positions, of which 1 is unfunded to help meet target reductions. The next budget for your consideration is the Community and Economic Development Building and Fire Safety Division budget, which begins on page 303. The recommended budget for the Building and Fire Safety Division is $5,571,462, which represents a $466,976 increase over the current fiscal year and is primarily due to the increased cost in professional and specialized for outside contractors and the technical support services for Computronics. The department has 32 allocated positions, of which one is unfunded. Matt Treber, Chief of Development Services, and the CED team is available for any questions on these two budgets.
Supervisor
just-
Rogers.
Yeah, I just wanted to, from hearing a recurring theme here, and I want to call attention to it before I lose it. And that is the specialized services. We're hearing that in almost every department. And how we approach these contract services to to let them understand that we're operating under fiscal constraints and that the possibility of them lowering the cost of their services slightly would be super beneficial to the people they're serving, and offer them maybe extended contracts in as a result of them lowering the cost of those services.
Supervisor, before
And
Matt.
I'm not directing this specifically at his department, but every department that use specialized services.
And before Matt, you answer that, we did look at those, and I kind of want to point out that at least from our office, like the public defender budget was amended a year ago. So not for this year, but it was already amended with
Right.
precise concepts.
Right,
that you-
right.
that you mentioned.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you, Supervisor Matt Treber, Chief of Development Services. So, excellent point, and we can certainly have some of those discussions. I would point out that when you see the increases on that specialized is primarily due to grant funds. We've received a number of different grant funds out of Caltrans most specifically, and so those are being funded from those grant programs. On the building side, again, we still have seen, as you all know, significant pressure on the new construction, new development side. So we influx those staffing to ensure we're maintaining that. It's offset by building impact fees and building revenue for that. But certainly an excellent point. We can broach that subject. I know we have at least one of those contracts with a contractor we have had for a period of time here that is coming up for consideration on extensions or those things. So it's a good timing to have those conversations. And we will have
Even
that.
if it's 1%, I mean,
Yep.
some of
Something.
them are significant and it would, if across the board, if that happened, if you got a 1% reduction, you'd have a huge savings. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you.
The next set of budgets for your consideration are the county GSA's budget, previously titled Water and Natural Resources, which begins on page 313 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $16,100,122 represent a $6,610,292 increase over the current fiscal year, primarily due to the Prop 68 recharge construction projects. The department has 10 allocated positions, of which all are funded. The next budget for your consideration is the Flood Control Services Fund, which begins on page 327 of the budget book. This budget is not part of the general fund and is a separate enterprise fund. It provides funding for flood system repair and other grant-funded projects. The recommended expenditures of $1,044,691 represent a decrease of $630,309 from the previous fiscal year, primarily due to a decrease in professional specialized services. Stephanie Anagnuson, Director of Water and Natural Resources, is available for any comments or questions your board has on the county GSAs and/or flood control budgets.
None?
The next budget for your consideration is the Local Agency Formation Commission budget, which begins on page 333 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $44,839 represent a $4,112 decrease over the current fiscal year. We are available for any questions. The next budget for your consideration is the Animal Services budget, which begins on page 335 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $2,166,651 represent a $104,288 increase in appropriations over the current year and an overall reduction of $70,912 in net county cost. Due to the budget target reductions, the department is forced to limit services to the county, city of Madera, and city of Chowchilla residents. Programs such as low-cost spay and neuter will be reduced. Services such as intake of relinquished pets or stray intake will be limited. This budget has 20 allocated positions, of which 2 are unfunded to help meet budget reductions. Amy Toller, Animal Services Director, is available for any questions.
Supervisor Wamhoff.
Yes. And this is a question for Amy regarding this, and had some previous discussions with those from county admin. Amy, thank you so much for being here. And I think you're doing an amazing job since you've been director. So I don't speak for just myself when I say that we're really lucky to have you in that position. Can you describe the cooperation between the county and the two cities regarding animal services, share of cost between those three entities, and how that actually looks right now?
As of right now, like with the city of Chowchilla, they handle everything themselves. We assist them if needed because they only have one officer. However, we are helping with their TNR programs and low-cost spay and neuter. So we are still providing vouchers for their residents for them, as well as free microchipping for their residents. But as far as animal services, they do have their own officer and they do have their own shelter. So that eliminates the cost for us. We are no longer taking in their animals for euthanasia because they are now doing euthanasia themselves. That has helped us in our cost. As far as the city of Madera, they do not have a shelter. So all of their animals do come to us. We are unfortunately burdened with the cost of their euthanasia, their intake, their medical cases, anything that's above just them picking up the animals. We are, unfortunately, the county is fitting the majority of that bill. We are still providing low-cost spay and neuter for their residents, as well as TNR programs, microchipping, things like that. I think our biggest hit is going to be medical, because we do take in all of their sick, their injured animals, as well as we do take healthy animals in from them as well for like potential dangerous dogs, vicious dogs, quarantine dogs. However, as far as their share in our budget and what we're actually it's costing the county, it is not anywhere near equal.
So what does that what does that actually look like? Not equal.
Well, when they're bringing in 40% of the animals to our facility, but we're at 180,000 a year, it's not equal. It is costing the county more.
What does 40% of the services actually cost?
For actual totals, I don't have. We are in the middle of a fee study to figure that out, what it is actually costing the county in taking in all of their medical, their strays, they're injured, they're sick, and all that.
Well, our total budget is approximately what for animal services?
It's just under 2 million.
And they're paying 180,000, yet they bring in 40% of the animals.
Correct.
So this sounds like we all need to do some work. We're missing
Yes.
a big part, and people aren't stepping up and paying their fair share, is what
Correct.
it looks like.
Absolutely.
So I think in this next fiscal year, this is something that we can really address, because that's a big number.
It is.
That's a big number.
Absolutely.
And our $750,000 deficit before we dip into our fund balance, I mean, that could be solved right then and there, unless there's something else I'm missing from the city paying their fair share of animal services. So that's something I want admin to take a deep dive, and
I appreciate
let's try to figure that out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Rogers.
Yeah, my colleagues brought up an excellent point here. It's one that's on my hit list as well. I've thought about several things, maybe capping if you utilize a service to this extent that you've paid for, then it's over at this point. And if you fail to continue to pay for that service, it ends. And I think it's a reality check time. Personally, for the city of Madera, um, big time. That's a lot of money. I also want to say too, not just the city of Madera, tax sharing agreements need to be in place with the city of Chowchilla. They utilize library services, ESS, behavioral health. We have facilities in those cities. ESS, behavioral health, public health has a presence there. Environmental health actually does a lot of things in the city in regards to restaurants, et cetera, businesses in general that handle environmental health services. These funds are being paid for by the county, but the benefits are reaped by the cities. That's not equitable. These are services paid for by citizens who are not even utilizing them. And so it's just not equitable. We've got to rectify these situations, especially like with this circumstance, 40%. I think you're looking at near $1 million, at least 900,000 that should be compensated to the county for these services that are rendered or not rendered them at some point.
Agree.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think, Madam Chair, if I,
Let me, Supervisor Poitras had a comment.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Thank you, Madam Chair. When's the fee study going to be completed?
It's still in the process. I don't have the exact date. I know it's been going for just under a year now. But they are working on it, city versus county.
Okay, so it's a fee study it's a city county fee study. It's not a.
For our department, I know it's with multiple departments are having this fee study done. But they are looking at the cost of everything with our department as far as the cost when the animal actually comes into our shelter and what it costs to house it, take care of it. And then they're looking at the numbers versus city versus the county and what it's costing us.
I think it's really important to make that a priority to get that, at least that portion of the fee study completed.
Right.
Because that'll really help the discussions moving forward. It gives us data, rather than, well, I think this and I think this and, whatever. Because I think because we do have a tax sharing agreement, with city and Madera, it would be, I'm sure that factors into it in some way, some manner. It's a little bit complicated, but but I think that's good. Thank you.
And with the study, it's mainly focusing on, on our fees, but we are going to be able to somewhat break it down to look at this is what's costing when we take in city animals.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Jamie, you want anything to add?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Jamie Bax with Community and Economic Development. Just to answer your question on the fee studies, we are working with NBS and the goal is to have it fall or winter of this year before your board for adoption.
Thank you. And I think Joel had a follow-up comment as well.
yeah, I just want to add that there was a 2018 study that was done on the animal shelter, and in 2018 dollars, we were upside down there. What I was gonna say is admin will work with animal services to maybe update that study. We don't necessarily need to pay another consultant, but we'll use the concepts there, pair that with a fee study, and then come up with facts and figures for the board to consider as it relates to what should be the share.
I'm sure. Thank you very much. And I think that's interesting because you mentioned it was done in 2018, but doesn't sound like we did much with it. So it's something that we need to really be serious about and disciplined and intentional in regards to once this study is completed. Thank you.
I believe, Madam Chair, I believe it was presented in the city. They rejected it as they do with most everything. And as Supervisor Poitras mentioned about tax sharing agreements, they tend to try to say that all of their general government expenses are paid for there. I'd just like to remind the board that in your current agreement to cancel services, you give them a 6-month notice. So keep that in the forefront of your mind. My honest view of this is that the city's version of animal control and the county's version of animal control are divergent enough that perhaps the city should go off on their own and do things the way they wish to do for their city, and we'll continue to do things the way we wish to do for the county. So we'll push this forward as as fast as we can so that if you do wish to exercise your cancellation of that agreement, that's the agreement for the $150,000. It's now moved up to about $180,000 from for offering services. There's a 6-month cancellation termination clause in there.
Thank you for the information. I just want to remind the board that, we should reach out to the city and offer to work together. Want to make sure that we reach out to them on a friendly note once we have all the data. Thank you.
Question.
Supervisor
Madam Chair,
Wonghoff.
thank you. And I think this might be a question for admin, but in that MOU that they're referring, is that, so they're essentially saying that part of their tax sharing agreement, is that codified anywhere, that that tax sharing agreement pays for
No,
a
that-
significant portion of animal services?
That would be in some sort of general discussion of what does tax sharing pay for? It is not codified in that agreement. And the admin to admin discussions, that's where the discussion is always led when we bring it up.
Okay, well,
We're
that,
not saying we agree with it. We're just saying that's the deflection.
well, that 6-month cancellation notice would be in line with our fee study as well. So, and when we're looking at a shortfall of $600,000 to $700,000 annually, time is of the essence, I think, when we're looking at that fee study. So if there's a way that we don't have to wait for that NBS fee study for animal services and like Joel was saying, to use our own metrics to update that 2018 study so we can have some relevant data, I think would be helpful. But again, time is of the essence on that, because I think this is, we're bleeding out the bottom of this.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, Amy.
The next budget for your consideration is the Fish and Game Fines budget, which begins on page 349 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $5,000 remains unchanged from the current fiscal year. This is not a general fund budget. We are available for any questions. The next budget for your consideration is the Trial Court Operations budget, which begins on page 351 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $1,320,531 remains unchanged from the current fiscal year. This budget represents the county's historical share of annual operation and maintenance cost for each court facility that was transferred to state control in 2007. We are available for any questions on this budget. The next budget for your consideration is a grand jury budget, which begins on page 355 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $105,000 represents a $22,270 increase over the current fiscal year. We are available for any questions. The next budget for your consideration is the public defender budget, which begins on page 359 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $4,135,887 reflect a decrease of $13,480 over the current fiscal year. We are available for any questions on this budget.
Thank you.
The next budget for your consideration is the Board of Supervisors budget, which begins on page 363 of the budget book. Total expenditures of $2,290,943 reflects an increase of $41,621 over the current fiscal year. There are 16 allocated positions proposed in this budget, of which 2 are unfunded. Karen Scribner, Chief Clerk of the Board, is available for any questions. The next set of budgets for your consideration are the administrative management budgets, which include the 311 customer service budget, which begins on page 371 of the budget book. Total expenditures of $1,550,021 for the administrative management budget reflects an increase of $175,063 over the current fiscal year. Total expenditures of $258,423 for the 311 customer service budget, which reflects a decrease of $7,833. There are 16 allocated positions proposed, of which 4 are unfunded, and an increase of 1 over the current fiscal year. Staff is available for any questions. The next budget for your consideration is the special payments budget, which begins on page 381 of the budget book. Total expenditures of $6,904,776 reflect an increase of $14,144 over the current fiscal year. This budget also includes the county's annual contribution to the Fresno Madera Area Agency on Aging, IHSS, Eastern Madera County Foundation, San Joaquin Valley Water Infrastructure Authority, and Yosemite Area Regional Transportation System. There are no allocated positions in this budget. CAO staff is available for any questions.
I'd like to,
Supervisor Rogers.
yeah, I sit on that San Joaquin Valley Infrastructure Water Authority. At this point, that organization was formed to procure the funding for Temperance Flat Dam. It took a lot to form the organization. If you remember, the hearings were in this chamber, if those of you that were present during that time. And we led the charge on forming it largely due to agricultural interests, and it was very important at the time. Unfortunately, the state rewarded all that effort with a paltry 200 million out of the 3 billion needed to build that dam from SB1 fund, or from Prop 1 funds at the time. And those funds have long since been returned, and the whole thing defunct. Not a single dam project was built. Not a single storage project was built out of those Prop 1 funds. And what I'm saying, long story short, is I think it's time to delete that funding and step out of that organization. There's really no benefit to it. And I'm not in favor of continuing memberships in organizations that cost us money where we're not getting anything for the money. It was a good organization at the time. It's no longer needed, in my opinion.
Okay. Anyone else?
The next budget for your consideration is the Health and Social Services Campus budget, which begins on page 385 of the budget book. This budget reflects the pass-through charges to public health and social services for the lease finance of the four health and social services buildings in the Road 28 campus. There are no positions associated with this budget as it serves as purely accounting purposes. CAO staff is available for any questions. The next budget for your consideration is the legal and insurance budget, which begins on page 387 of the budget book. Total recommended expenditures of $8,290,323 reflect an increase of $1,298,794 over the current fiscal year, primarily due to the rising cost of retiree health insurance and liability insurance premiums. There are 2 allocated positions in this budget. Both are funded and reflect no increase from the current fiscal year. Darren McCandless, Deputy CAO, is available for any questions. The next budget for your consideration is the County Council budget, which begins on page 395 of the budget book. Total expenditures of $2,255,000 reflect an increase of $305,000 from the current fiscal year. Staff is available for any questions.
None. Moving on.
The next budget for your consideration is the Human Resources budget, which begins on page 399 of the budget book. Total expenditures of $2,453,601 reflect a decrease of $274,846 over the current fiscal year. The department has 21 allocated positions, of which 5 are unfunded. Shanika Dixon, Human Resources Director, is available for any questions.
Questions? Moving on.
The next budget for your consideration is the Public Information Team budget, which begins on page 407 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $10,000 reflect no increase from the current fiscal year. These expenditures are used to help supplement expenses for the Public Information Team. Staff is available for any questions.
Thank you.
The next set of budgets for your consideration are the general services budgets, which begin on page 411 of the budget book. Total expenditures of $672,574 for the general services main budget reflect a decrease of $12,303 from the current fiscal year. Total recommended expenditures of $727,500 for the building operations budget reflect no increase from the current fiscal year. Total expenditures of $1,905,818 for the building maintenance budget reflect an increase of $70,117 from the current fiscal year. And total expenditures of $913,649 for the grounds maintenance budget reflects a decrease of $21,822 from the current fiscal year. There are a total of 30 allocated positions across all of its budget orgs, of which 6 are unfunded. Staff is available for any questions. The next budget for your consideration is the utilities budget, which begins on page 431 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $1,357,950 reflect an increase of $318,126 from the current fiscal year. Staff is available for any questions.
Thank you.
The next budget for your consideration is the auditor controller budget, which begins on page 433 of the budget book. Total expenditures of $2,988,591 reflect a decrease of $26,090 over the current fiscal year. The department has 25 allocated positions, of which 3 are unfunded to meet target reductions. David Richstone, auditor controller, is available for any questions. The next budgets for your consideration are the assessor budgets, which begin on page 441 of the budget book. There are 2 budget orgs for assessors, the assessor's main budget and the GIS layer redraw. Total recommended expenditures for the assessor's main budget of $2,829,862 reflect a decrease of $46,896 from the current fiscal year. Total recommended expenditures for the assessor's GIS layer redraw budget of $99,000 reflect no increase from the current fiscal year. There are 33 allocated positions, of which 3 are unfunded to meet target reductions. Brett Frazier, County Assessor, is available for any questions. The next set of budgets for your consideration are the tax collector and treasurer budgets, which begin on page 453 of the budget book. Total recommended expenditures for the tax collector budget of $1,814,300 reflect an increase of $69,116 from the current fiscal year. Total recommended expenditures for the treasurer budget of $1,831,672 reflect an increase of $88,905 from the current fiscal year. There are a total of 25 allocated positions in these budgets, of which 1 is unfunded. Tracy Kennedy, tax collector, is available for any questions.
Thank you.
The next budgets for your consideration are the clerk recorder and elections budget, which begin on page 477 of the budget book. Total recommended expenditures for the county clerk recorder of $1,774,148 reflect an increase of $90,321 over the current fiscal year. Total recommended expenditures of the elections budget of $1,854,595 reflect an increase of $9,751 over the current fiscal year. There are a total of 20 allocated positions across both budgets, of which 1 is unfunded. Becky Martinez, County Clerk Recorder, is available for any questions. The next budget for your consideration is the mailroom budget, which begins on page 493 of the budget book. Total expenditures of $529,752 reflect an increase of $45,333 from the current fiscal year. There are a total of 4 allocated positions, of which 2 are unfunded. Becky Martinez is available for any questions. Then the next set of budgets for your consideration are the information technology budgets, which begin on page 499 of the budget book. IT consists of 4 general fund budgets, beginning with the IT main budget. Total recommended expenditures of $7,803,133 for the IT main budget reflect a decrease of $128,151 over the current fiscal year. Total recommended expenditures of $437,785 for the IT One Solution budget reflects a decrease of $6,062 over the current fiscal year. Total recommended expenditures of $4,208,418 for the IT Information Security budget reflect an increase of $524,312, primarily due to software and subscription services. Total recommended expenditures of $953,391 for the IT VoIP phone system reflect a decrease of $125,960 over the current fiscal year. IT has 35 allocated positions, of which one is unfunded. Tanya Say, Chief Information Officer, is available for any questions.
Supervisor Wamhaugh.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I have some questions regarding the standby and overtime. I'm sorry, Tanya, I see those crutches.
Thank you for being
You
here.
have a delegate, maybe, perhaps?
You can-
Now I just feel cruel. I'm sorry.
Tanya Say, Chief Information Officer.
Yes, thank you. I was hoping you could help me understand the workings of your department when it comes to standby, pay, and overtime. So how is one person deemed on standby in addition to their regular duties?
Okay, so we have 4 distinct divisions. We have in the information technology budget, we have the general help desk services. We have the system support, we have the network support, and we have the application support. 3 of those divisions, we have somebody on call. We have network, we have the general help desk, and we have the system support available on call. We also, in the security budget, we also have somebody on call there as well. The reason is because these are all very distinct skill sets. So if you've got a public safety department that's down because they have a network issue at the juvenile hall or the jail, then we need somebody who has a network expertise to be there. Same goes for the systems, same goes for security, and same goes for the regular general help desk.
So we always have 3 people 24/7, 4 people 24/7 on call. If someone is on call and they do get a call, is overtime attached onto that standby pay?
Yes, and we follow the MOU completely. We work with HR to make sure that we're in compliance with the MOU. And I believe that it's for one callback, it's a 2-hour overtime call.
Are any of those done remotely?
Yes, they are done remotely. Some are done remotely. Yes.
So if someone gets locked out for a password, is that a typical call that the general help desk might
Yes,
get?
that is a typical call. And yes, that would require a 2-hour overtime.
So for someone who's on standby, they get a call for a locked out password, that person is getting, in addition to their standby pay, a minimum of 2 hours, even though they're working remotely.
Yes.
Okay.
And that is, we believe we're in compliance with the MOU.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Next.
The next budgets for your consideration are the Public Works budgets, which begin on page 553 of the budget book. Total recommended expenditures for the Public Works main budget is $5,696,273 that reflect a decrease of $308,844 from the current fiscal year. Total recommended expenditures of $4,009,463 for the Special Districts Administration budget reflect an increase of $299,895 from the current fiscal year. Total recommended expenditures of 44,901,490 for the roads and bridges budget reflect an increase of $11,871,908 from the current fiscal year. Total recommended expenditures of 14,858,267 for the SB1 road and bridges budget reflects an increase of 1,697,735 over the current fiscal year. And total recommended expenditures of 8,175,320 for the road transit budget reflects an increase of 1,319,275 from the current fiscal year. There are a total of 137 allocated positions across all of its budget orgs, of which 6 are unfunded over the fiscal year. Matt Treber, Chief of Development Services, is available for any questions.
Supervisor Rogers.
Yeah, are we seeing any fluctuation in the funding that's coming from SB1 and are we seeing decrease, increase? What are we seeing there?
Thank you, Supervisor Matt Treber, and I got the team behind me here of the brains of the operation. The SB1 funds, we have seen a slight uptick in those funds, right? This year, prior years, we were in the $6 to $7 million. Latest estimates are that we're north of just a little north of 8 million is what they're estimating in SB1 fund collection that's occurring there.
Okay, what about overall road funds? Are we seeing any uptick at all, or is it stagnant? What's the deal?
Yeah, I think the safe bet there is we really haven't seen a significant jump. The highway user gas tax, right? And nobody behind me is running to grab this mic, but we are seeing that decreasing slightly, and I think that trend is set to continue without something occurring at the state level as electrification keeps getting pushed and folks, you know, we're just using less gas, so there's less tax revenue coming in through those programs.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The next budget for your consideration is the Behavioral Health Services budget, which begins on page 591 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $55,605,574 represent an $11,472,984 increase over the current fiscal year, primarily due to an increase in professional and specialized services for contracted services for psychiatrics, telemed, and medication monitoring services. This budget is 100% funded through state, federal, and other third-party sources with no net county cost. There are 229 allocated positions proposed in this budget, of which all are funded. Christine Doss, Director of Behavioral Health, is available for any questions.
Joel or Christine, we had an extensive conversation about this, but for the public's, information, can you briefly discuss, if there's funding from the feds that's slashed, what that translates into for at the local level?
Certainly, I'm going to invite Christine to talk about the mental health part. Jay and I are monitoring the developments in Congress as far as entitlement reform. At the moment, the biggest risk for the counties are Medicaid funding and also potentially a county share for CalFresh benefits, food stamps benefits. So those are the two biggest risk factors. I don't believe anything's settled yet, but we're keeping an eye on it.
Christine Doss, Behavioral Health Services. So we just had a overview by Mike Guys for a projection of the budget, and we're looking at no changes in this next fiscal year.
I have a quick question on this.
Supervisor Rogers.
Yeah, we have a maintenance of effort in almost every social services department. Is that correct?
Yes.
Those are general fund dollars. Is that correct?
I believe they're Medicaid.
Yes.
I'll answer that.
Yeah.
There are multiple maintenance of efforts and county shares on subvented. So DSS does have maintenance of effort. It's covered either with realignment and general fund dollars because there's not enough realignment to cover that. When it's not enough, then you have to use general fund. So the 3.6, 3.9 million in general fund that's in DSS, it's to plug that gap with what realignment provides and the minimum share or the maintenance of effort. I call it county share total because some are presented as maintenance of effort. Some are presented as percentage share of cost of which we do not control, right? So
Right. So what are our general fund obligations so far with the maintenance of effort?
right. So there is 3.9 million in county share from the general fund.
Okay.
Right. That's
Okay.
I believe it's 3.6%.
The reason that's important to me at this point is when we talk about tax sharing agreements with the cities, that's a consideration that I don't believe has been always talked about. That's, both cities utilize services, as I said, from behavioral health. We have a behavioral health facility in Chowchilla. From DSS, we have a DSS facility in Chowchilla. We have those facilities in the city of Madera. We have a presence with our public health mobile unit in Chowchilla and Madera. And I think this maintenance of effort is a consideration when it comes to cost, share of costs. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next budget for your consideration is the public health budget, which begins on page 609 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $30,133,787 represent a $3,384,256 increase from the current fiscal year, primarily due to an increase in professional specialized services as a result of an increase in the local match payment for the Medi-Cal rate range intergovernmental transfer. This budget is 100% funded through state, federal, and other third-party sources with no net county cost. There are 152 allocated positions proposed in this budget, of which 10 are unfunded. Sarah Boss, Director of Public Health, is available for any questions.
I've got a question real quick. And this is a nexus with, I'll let you get up here, but this is a nexus with library funding. And I was in a discussion with the Friends of the Library the other day in regards to the possibility of using, and I brought this up in the meeting, just a thought that popped into my head of utilizing some subvented funding, utilizing those facilities as cooling centers during really super hot times in the summer. And also unrelated to public health, but workforce development because of their access to the internet, their provision of computers, et cetera. And people do go there and search for jobs. That's part of the thing. But the cooling centers thing directly relates to public health. And I thought about bringing this up during the discussions because what would be the possibility of that nexus with public health?
The Office of Emergency Services in the Sheriff's Department is the one that oversees and puts together the cooling centers. And so I would defer to them with regards to the locations. I know currently they're using the sheriff's office, but I don't know if the sheriff is present to be able to speak to that.
I don't see them here. I think their part was taken up and they left. That's okay.
Yeah.
But we can discuss it with them. If you could bring that up with them. And I'm assuming that even in EOS that the subvented dollars from public health are utilized for cooling centers because that's a direct relation, right?
To date, there haven't been real expenses because we're using county facilities and we keep those open.
Right.
For the most part, my understanding is that OES just has a single person that's stationed there at that time. And public health has been tagged. We've had conversations because of the plans for the Community Resilience Center, serving as a 24-hour emergency shelter, also serving as a cooling center at that time. But really, a cooling center is very easy to operate. And usually we're just running the AC as we always would
Right.
in hot climates, and
Right.
folks are able to come and sit and enjoy the cool air.
Yeah, my main reason for bringing it up is because we are looking for legitimate uses of subvented dollars to offset county general fund monies. I think that's a genuine use of the funds of the public health. It says it all. Public health, providing cooling centers so people don't get overheated and die. There's a lot of people that elderly people can't run their air. I mean, they can't afford that. It's not going to happen. So it's something I really would like for staff to look into a little more heavily, even in every aspect. Think out of the box of ways that we can, not that we want to drain all the funds out of these other areas, but I'm saying legitimately use them to offset county general fund costs, because this is where we're really struggling. And we want to make the team work. We want to put it all together and make it work effectively and efficiency. We're all a team. So let's do that together and make that happen. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I do want to make a comment in response. So I do want to, we'll work with Sheriff and Public Health to look into that. But I failed to highlight in our presentation earlier, but I do want to highlight now that the Director BOS is here. In discussions with Public Health and DSS, Public Health did redirect 240,000 of public health funding so that DSS can cut their net county cost by 240,000. So there is that operation that's happening. I forgot to mention it in our presentation.
Well, I really appreciate that. And that is a highlight worth mentioning, because that is real teamwork. And that is, we've got to think out of the box to work together to help each department succeed. And thank you for doing that. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next budget for your consideration is the environmental health budget, which begins on page 625 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $3,009,348 represent a decrease of $470,877 over the current fiscal year. This budget is 100% funded through state, federal, and other third-party sources with no net county cost. There are 19 allocated positions in this budget, of which one is unfunded. Matt Treber, Chief of Development Services, and the CED team is available for any questions. Thank you. The next budget for your consideration is the Fairmead Liner Fund budget, which is on page 637 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $26,952,336 reflect an increase of $7,802,336 from the current fiscal year, primarily due to an increase in appropriations for contingencies. There are 4 allocated positions proposed in this budget, all of which are funded. Matt Treber, Chief of Development Services, is available for any questions on this budget. Thank you. The next set of departmental budgets for your consideration is the Department of Social Services budgets, which begins on page 647 of the budget book. The total recommended expenditures of $141,148,897 represent a decrease of $2,237,422 over the current fiscal year. The total estimated net county cost of all social services programs is $2,975,630, which represent a decrease of $364,009 over the current fiscal year, based on projected third-party revenues and realignment revenues available for all programs. There are a total of 394 positions allocated to this department, of which all are funded. Deborah Martinez, Director of Social Services, is available for any comments or questions. Thank you. The next budget for your consideration is the Veteran Services budget, which begins on page 697 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $489,877 represent a $30,952 decrease over the current fiscal year. There are 4 allocated positions in this budget, of which one is unfunded. Josh Christopherson, Veteran Services Officer, is available for any questions.
Thank you.
The next budget for your consideration is the Community Action Partnership budget, which begins on page 703 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $329,428 represent a $5,083 increase over the current fiscal year due to salaries and employee benefits. Maddie Mendez, Executive Director of CAPMC, is available for any questions.
Thank you.
The next budget for your consideration is the Senior Meals Program budget, which begins on page 707 of the budget book. The recommended expenditures of $129,000 is based on the level of pass-through funding for the Senior Congregate Meals Program and the county's required match. Funding for this program was previously allocated in Org 08200 Community Action Partnership and in 02200 Special Payments for the county's match. We are available for any questions. The next budget for your consideration is the Homelessness Grants budget, which begins on page 709 of the budget book. The Homelessness Grants budgets consist of the Housing Assistance and Prevention Program, or HAP grants, awarded to the county. Recommended expenditures of $2,369,159 represents a $431,527 decrease over the current fiscal year, primarily due to the drawdown of the various HAP grants. We are available for any questions.
Supervisor Poitras.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just have a question on page 709. There's the, I know that there is or was or has been a strategic plan development. It looks like this was an old paragraph because it says that funding for the strategic plan is provided by the FMCOC. The plan is expected to be completed by the third quarter of fiscal year 22-23. So I would suspect that it's being completed and it'll have a county-wide focus at addressing homelessness. And so I guess what I'm asking is, it's how is this strategic plan that I'm guessing has been developed and how has it done all these things that it said it was going to do?
Yes, Supervisor, yes. I wouldn't say that it has accomplished fully what was set out, but we are in a better spot than we are before we started the strategic plan. For instance, there is active collaboration happening, not just between agencies of the county, but between agencies of the two cities. So as mentioned in the previous board meeting, there is the homelessness task force that's going to evolve into the coordinating task force countywide. That's work that's directly attributable to work that was done in strategic plan. There are also 3 major subcommittees that focus on different aspects of the plan, and that's involved between county agencies and other agencies in the community to achieve the specific goals of those subcommittees.
Okay, well, thank you. I would just suggest maybe updating this paragraph for next year.
Yes, I apologize. Yes, I've crossed it out as you're mentioning. It's like, oh yeah, this is outdated. Our apologies.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question regarding homelessness. I know that we've updated our point in time count. Is that correct?
Yeah, we'll defer to Maddie on that one.
Welcome.
Hi.
Thank you. Good morning, Maddie Mendez. Yes, we did do a point in time count. We're expecting the HUD results to come out later this month. There has been a preliminary report issued by Fresno Madera Continuum of Care, and they listed percentages, not actual numbers based on city and county of the point in time count.
And what do those numbers look like in the preliminary?
We don't have the numbers. We weren't issued the numbers. We just issued percentages.
Percentages. What were the
Yes.
percentages?
There was about, I believe it was,
I think we went up, right?
we did, as a region.
As a
We,
region.
we went up as a region, yes.
Is there any data on here locally, here in Madera?
No, there's no data as of yet, and the official information. So what happens during the point in time count is we receive an app. And when we go out and we identify homeless that night, we enter the information into the app. So that was from Eastern Madera County. There was a team in Chowchilla Fairmead, and then there was 2 teams for the city of Madera, and also including the county of Madera, which is Tozier Road and toward the river and the county area. And so there was another team there. So all of that information was issued into the app. And then that's collected, and then by the Fresno Housing Authority. They're the team that takes the lead on gathering the information and submitting it to HUD.
Right. When do we expect those full results?
The end of June.
End of June.
End
Okay.
of June. There should be a public hearing or public information that will be in Fresno and led by the Fresno Madera Laura Moreno, the chair, and she will then and then it'll break down Madera County, Madera City.
Well, I hope our numbers went down and everyone else's went up, if that's the case. So obviously don't want anyone's numbers to go up, but yeah, hopeful.
Hopeful, yes.
It doesn't look good with percentages going up as a region, though.
Yes,
Thank
exactly.
you.
I had a quick question on that too.
Go ahead.
You may have already answered it. I'm preoccupied with so many things here. When we do the point in time count,
Yes, Supervisor.
what's that?
Yes.
When we do that, do we talk to the individuals about their origins, where they came from? If they came from a different county, I want to know that. I mean, I think that's important. Is it a migrating thing? And we know that happens.
It does.
Yeah.
So what we ask is the next day. So the point in time count happens at night. It takes place at sunset, and then it takes place until we finish counting that night. The following 2 days, we go back out to the same areas and conduct surveys.
Okay.
Those surveys, that's when we ask the questions. But again, those surveys are input into a database from the Fresno Madera Continuum of Care. So when we gather the information, where do you come from? It's usually during our outreach efforts. It's after the fact when we're asking. And since we are a region, we do find individuals that said, I'm from Fresno. I'm from, Merced. We, in some instances, not to extend, but we have people that'll come from Madera, Merced, and then they realize that the services aren't as prepared as maybe Merced is, so they go back. But, we do find that situation recently last week with the help of Mike Motz and his team. It had to do with evictions. A dad and a daughter were provided train tickets to go back to Bakersfield because that's where they originated from. So it's working together, as you mentioned earlier, all of the departments working together to make sure that things are happening. But yes, I do believe there are some, but I still believe a large part are from the area.
It's a good thing to know. And when you make your presentation, I'd love to know the percentage of people that are out of the area that migrated here to.
Okay.
It'd be a good thing to know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The next budget for your consideration is the library services budget, which begins on page 719 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $2,271,491 represent a $39,253 decrease over the current fiscal year. To meet the target budget reduction, costs for materials and supplies for all 5 library locations and the bookmobile are recommended decreased. There are 24 allocated positions for this budget, of which 3 are unfunded to meet budgetary reductions. Krista Riggs, Library Director, is available for any comments or questions.
Welcome, Krista. I believe you have some comments.
I just have a statement if appropriate. I'll keep it brief. Good morning, by the way. Libraries are essential public infrastructure, just like roads and schools. They support our children's education, give adults the tools to improve their lives, and serve as one of the only safe, free public spaces in many of our communities. As our state librarian recently mentioned, for every $1 invested in libraries, there's a yield of $4 to $5 in community value.
Community members here in Madera County have told us that they have chosen where to live and where to retire based on having a library location nearby. Our libraries are active community centers that are attractive selling points for the new housing developments coming to our county. Why do libraries matter? Well, children not reading at a grade level by third grade are significantly less likely to graduate from high school and much likelier to become incarcerated later in life. Almost 85% of teenagers in the juvenile justice system are functionally illiterate. Over 70% of incarcerated individuals in America cannot read above a fourth grade level. Early intervention at the library, such as our story times, online tutoring, school field trips, and the summer reading program we're just kicking off tomorrow, are key in closing this gap. The library also offers computer classes, English as second language classes, and a free online high school diploma program for adults. For economic support, we provide job search resources and resume help and partnerships with our workforce development. We also offer free internet, circulating laptops and hotspots, copying, printing, and faxing, and public meeting spaces and meeting rooms. For access, rural residents rely on our branches for information, programs, and services that they can't access elsewhere. We can be their lifeline to the outside world. Libraries level the playing field. Everyone's welcome, no matter of their income, age, or housing situation. Cuts to libraries can isolate our rural communities. We hear that the community wants more of us, more open hours, and more programs and services, which is wonderful. But please continue to support the Madera County Library as part of the essential infrastructure of our county. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Supervisor Rogers.
I just have a little statement. Your speech highlights my feelings about funding the library. As you see, I'm looking for ways to help subvert that. My granddaughter came to me and showed me her library card. 8 years old, reads at a junior in high school level. In fact, she may have popped up last week to senior in high school level. Her vocabulary is extensive. She reads well. She'll be able to do anything in life because she can read and write well. And that is so important. Thomas Jefferson was very adamant that the founding of the library system was important because a well-educated public meant the survival of democracy through obvious means. So it's really important that we continue to find ways to expand the services. I understand through the Friends of the Library in Chowchilla that they have actually expanded their subscribership, and that's great to hear. I encourage them to make some contacts that they weren't aware of. So they probably already talked to you about all that.
They have, and thank you for meeting with them. And yeah, we're grateful for all of our friends groups and all of their advocacy and for all the support of our supervisors. And
Right.
thank you for those contacts.
Oh, you're welcome. And I don't want to hesitate to also mention that there's some maintenance needs going to there. And I see them on a daily basis when I drive by that facility. Some of the design components that were incorporated into that facility weren't very well thought out and need to be altered so that it's, I'm referring specifically to the mansard on the front, the facade, that can be altered with probably some metal would be a good way to do that, baked enamel coating type facade. That's just a side note. Anyway, I want to continue the dialogue on this with you, and I appreciate your efforts. It's very important to our community to keep that going. Thank you.
Thank you. And we do appreciate being a member of a great team as well and wanting to do our part, as you've all mentioned, of being a team player as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Krista. Next.
The next budget for your consideration is the cooperative extension budget, which begins on page 725 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $119,034 is an increase of $7,000 from the current fiscal year. Kamjo Randawa, Fresno Madera Cooperative Extension Director, is available for any questions.
Thank you.
The next budget for your consideration is the fleet services budget, which begins on page 733 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $9,054,318 represents a $4,074,378 increase over the current fiscal year, primarily due to an increase in equipment for the fiscal year. Expenditures in this budget are offset primarily by mileage charges to user departments as well as vehicle maintenance charges to subvented departments. There are 8 positions allocated to this budget, of which all are funded. We, as well as Mike Motts, Sheriff Civil Unit Manager, are available for any questions.
I have one, Madam Chair.
Supervisor Wamhaugh.
I'll wait for Mike to come down. Mike and I spoke briefly last week, but we've been approached by companies and organizations regarding leasing and fleet services. I know that there's 2 or 3 of those companies out there that all claim that they can provide savings through leasing. I always question, when people are pitching the county as far as what those actual savings are, or how real those are. But I wanted to get from your perspective, I know you've been pitched by a couple of these folks as well, and it seems to me that based on, our fleet and what we're spending, fuel economy for older vehicles and, adding vehicles to a surplus after X number of years when they're worth virtually nothing or barely nothing. Is this something that you believe that the county could save a significant amount of money by switching to one of these leasing models or a combination thereof?
Yes, good morning, Mike Watts, Sheriff Civil Unit Manager and Acting Fleet Superintendent for the County of Madera. I do believe that there could be a significant cost savings by going this route. Me and Joel and Jessica have been talking about it quite a bit. I don't know the actual numbers, but I do believe that there could be some cost savings there based off of maintenance costs and being able to rotate vehicles out while they're worth a lot more than they are at 130,000 miles. I think the impact of the initial cost of buying a vehicle versus leasing a vehicle might be save substantial amount of money as well. I think Joel could probably answer that question as well. He's more in tune with that kind of stuff there, but I do believe that there is a potential there.
Yeah, I think, Mike, thank you, Supervisor. We're discussing this ongoing and we're in contact with several of these companies. I think what we're trying to do is put together a presentation at a regularly scheduled board meeting to look at different options for direction in the fleet, whether 100%. And to be clear, we are currently leasing vehicles, but we're doing it through municipal leasing. So we're basically managing it on our own. I think the services, the plus side that these companies can provide is the buy and sell decision. That's not necessarily our expertise, or nor do we have the capacity to monitor the market for that. It's just kind of tricky to do that because obviously 2/3 of our fleet are patrol vehicles and they're practically worth nothing at the end of 3 years. But for the 1/3 of the fleet, there's definitely a huge potential. And I think we're going to continue that discussion and figure out when this summer to take it to the board so that we can have a meaningful discussion and perhaps have some of these folks present in public as well.
Yeah, because I think the way we've been doing it is a little archaic, but it is traditional. You buy a vehicle, you drive it into the ground, and you sell it for a couple $1,000 on some government website generally, right?
Other than this municipality lease that Joel mentioned through a different company, yeah, usually if we buy the vehicle outright and we drive it, say, 130,000 or 150,000 miles, if it's a utility truck, we auction them off. Now, I will say the market for auctioning vehicles off now are a little bit different than they were a couple of years ago. But for the most part, yeah, you're correct.
Yeah.
But that also helps on residual values as well, right? And this is one of those things where it goes against conventional wisdom, but leasing a brand new Toyota Sienna has a higher capitalization cost, higher MSRP versus a Grand Caravan, as an example.
Absolutely.
But 2 years down the road, what's the residual value? on a 2025, Sierra or a Toyota Sienna minivan versus a 2-year-old or 5-year-old Dodge Grand Caravan.
And I think
And
that's,
having someone look at who understands this market, who actively monitors it, and can actually provide us the best value, because I don't think we have reached our potential with our fleet.
and I think that's what Joel was mentioning, is these companies that we've spoke with, that's what they do.
Yeah.
They understand the markets, they have the capacity to understand when is a good time to get rid of a vehicle. Is it worth more now, or is it worth more, hold on to it? Or is this vehicle hold more residual value than this type of vehicle, and those kind of things, and timing too.
Right. And I think, to Mike's point, there are several companies that do that, and I think that's definitely a plus. Where we're being careful that what we bring to your board is that their contract structures are different. I'm not going to name companies, but there are companies who you never get ownership of the vehicle. So if we are, and we do encounter those situations, like a heavy duty truck, where we don't want to replace it, we want to keep it, and saying, oh, but we can't keep it because under the contract and their model, you always will have to pay a management fee for that. And those are the angles that we're looking at. They're not built differently, but the basic concept of timing the market, buying the vehicle that retains the equity better than other vehicles. I think there are several that provide. It's the finer details of what's our arrangement here. That's what we're trying to get at, and how to sort all of that and present it to the board with, coherent recommendations.
Yeah, well, I'm excited for that. I think this is just another example of potential cost savings. I think upwards of probably $500,000 on our fleet services, just by switching models, or fleet/fuel consumption. So I'm excited for that, and thank you for the info.
Supervisor Rogers.
Yeah, Mike, it's a privilege to work with you. You do a great job. Appreciate you very
Likewise.
much. And one of the things I wanted to highlight is the potential I see for a real issue coming at us with fuel costs. State of California losing refineries. We've lost two major refineries. We're also the provider for much of Arizona's fuel, I believe, in refining sense. So it's a pretty serious issue, and I knew you were already aware of it. I just want to highlight that budget wise, that could be a real problem, a real issue for this county, and we need to keep abreast of that. And if you have any suggestions, you feel free to bring them to us if you had any thoughts that might help us there. Well, I mean, to be completely transparent, I am looking at, and I've talked to Joel and county administration about going to plug-in hybrid models and utilizing some of the grant funding through the San Joaquin Air Pollution to replace at least 5 of the vehicles that are currently just regular natural vehicles running on gas, where these are plug-in hybrids. So that'll save some money on fuel consumption. And then eventually, I think at some point, we're going to have to explore the infrastructure of electrical vehicles, completely electric. But at this point, we have to have the infrastructure first before we can do that. Right. But yeah, we're looking at different options, trying to get some grant funding again to fund at least 5 of these plug-in hybrid vehicles through that San Joaquin Air Pollution. I know we're looking into right now some solar aspects. I'm not sure what all we're looking at, but the idea, the timing of that probably is pretty good to look into charging stations that we might get grants for those charging stations on our own system that can be utilized during peak hours to charge hundreds of vehicles, literally. Right. And offset a lot of that cost. That's like free energy, really, in a sense. So, but it is imperative that we have the infrastructure in place before, because otherwise we're going to have vehicles that we're not even able to charge. Absolutely, it would be ridiculous, wouldn't it? Yeah. Thank you for that. I knew you'd have a response to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you for your time.
The next budget for your consideration is the microwave radio services budget, which begins on page 743 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of 440,382 represent a 34,093 decrease over the current fiscal year based on the expense to fund the microwave equipment replacement project. This is not a general fund budget, and there are no positions included in this budget. Tanya Say, Chief Information Officer, is available for any questions.
Thank you very much.
That wraps up the main general fund budgets, and now moving to special revenue budgets. The special revenue fund budgets represent governmental funding streams that are tied to a specific purpose, like a grant or realignment. They are budgeted annually to meet statutory requirements and to provide an added level of transparency. These funds are budgeted as operating transfers into operating funds like the general fund, where they are utilized for operations. Staff from various departments are available for any questions you may have on any of these budgets.
Do we have any questions from the board? Comments? None. When I open the public hearing, I'll call for public comment. Okay, we will open the public hearing at this time. Do we have any public comment on these items?
None online.
Wasn't this a section that?
Yeah,
Question.
we had Dan Metz online earlier on.
Is he online? He's no longer. He did submit written comments.
Yeah.
And
He's to come back at 1 o'clock.
okay.
And Madam Chair, I think as was mentioned earlier, one of the recommendations was going to be to leave the public comment open until closer to the part of the agenda where the request will be made to adopt the resolution
Okay.
and the budget. And so that would allow for additional public comment with the
Okay.
public hearing remaining open.
So I'll leave the public hearing open. Do we have any general comments from the board at this time?
On the entire program?
Sure.
Okay, well, I'll address something real quick. I just want to highlight some of the things that we talked about just to make sure they're on your checklist for future, but and I'll just go through them as quick as I can. Supplemental subvented funding for libraries as cooling centers, work development. Infrastructure in place for charge stations for electric vehicles for future offsetting of fuel costs. And this is one important one right here. Continue with targeted hiring freeze, unfunding positions through attrition and as necessary. I think that's going to be key. We cannot continue to grow this workforce when we can't pay them. It's just not going to happen. That I'm just being blunt. That's bottom line. We need to continue to look at organizational restructuring as cost saving, and attrition provide. And we're doing some of that now. We'll have some stuff to bring in the future. I'm sure that will be very beneficial countywide. Specialized services, increase contact track terms, time periods for reduction in costs. I think that's got to be looked at across the board for contract services. Defunding the SGAVWIA. I think there's we'll have to look at what the terms are on that as far as like, we'll notify them, take it out. That's got to be agreed upon by the board though. Something that we didn't talk about at all yet, but we still have that 6 million reserve fund, the HSR money that was brought in, mitigation funds, and we use it as revolving loan for county services, and I think it should be kept there and continued that way. That's a good use of those funds. It saves us money. It provides projects, and it's an important fund mechanism. Anyway, tax sharing agreements based on services with the two cities, library, DSS, BH, PH, EH, whatever else animal services. We talked about that already. The revenue shortfalls there. So those are just notes. Also, I didn't include the maintenance of effort in that, but when we talk to the cities, the maintenance of effort, definitely a component of what we need to be discussing with them. I appreciate your giving me that opportunity just to highlight those things. I think feedback is good, and I think understanding where we're at and what we need to do is imperative. It's part of goal setting, talking, good communication, competitive discussion. Thank you.
Supervisor Wamhaugh.
Yeah, just quickly, Madam Chair, just to highlight, this is a twofold problem. It's an expense problem and a revenue problem. So obviously we need to break down as many barriers as we can as a county to be open for business, and making sure that we can, provide a good solid tax base to fund all of these vital services. And so that's one component. So, in the next coming years, making sure that all the decisions that we make as a board are pro-business, and making sure that we grow our way out of this and not just continue to tax. We have continued things like Measure T, and people are floating around public safety taxes and things like that. And people feel like, it's just one thing after another. And, we can explain away as much as we can, but the people feel it, right? And it's not just our expenses that are going up on the government side, it's everybody's expenses going up. And so always be cognizant and aware that, we can be healthier by being more vibrant and more economically viable in this county. So really put a focus on making this a great place to live, a great place to work, and people, a place where people want to shop and vacation and do all those things, because that is going to help us. On the expense line, I think, and I want to congratulate admin for all the work that you guys have been doing with all the departments. And obviously this is one day of budget hearings, but you guys have been in the trenches on this for quite some time. And I want to thank you, Joel, for spending the time and the after hours text messages and all that stuff that I bug you with regarding these things, because I know you're in the trenches with all this. And I ask these dumb little questions, but you've thought about them 15 times already and had 20 conversations with other people.
They're not
about
dumb,
them.
but
Thank you. But reorganization, that's going to have to be a component of this. I think we've identified some key deficiencies, regarding animal services, fleet services, where we have some great opportunities to grow out of that, and just continued departmental efficiencies that we can work through with human resources when it comes to redoing our MOUs and making sure that we can set ourselves up for long-term success, because these MOUs can cripple us at the same time. I think looking at just all these little efficiencies like overtime, or someone who unlocks a password from their home. So I'm not saying anything about that in particular, but it's something, these are the types of things that we need to look at moving forward, or continue looking at. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Supervisor. What else?
Can I
That's
take
it.
seconds real quick? I forgot two things. One was we have brought this up before about subvented departments renting storage space from the general fund, paying back the general fund for those spaces. Also, surplus property. I banged on that a little bit, and we do have a little bit that we can do there. That's money that can go into the till, and every dime counts right now. So and I would encourage staff also to each department, and this is something that needs to be done on a departmental level, but is to look at your copying costs and look at what can be done electronically versus copy wise, because copies are they're getting more expensive by the day. And those machines are costly to maintenance and keep in production. So where we can cut costs there, people say, well, that's a small thing. Well, that small thing added up to $2.5 million a few years ago. And that's what we saved. And that's a lot of money. Those are jobs, those are raises, those are all those things that the survival for departments. So we can look at them. Thank you.
For reference, Supervisor, our annual, more can be done and we're continuously looking at it, but we spend 300,000 countywide for copier costs. We have 90 copiers total, which we can still chip away at it, but it's not bad for an agency our size.
That's great.
So I just want to highlight that, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, if that concludes the presentation, we will recess. We will leave the public hearing open, but we will recess until 1 o'clock to get into our special districts hearings.
Done.
All right, thank you all very much.
I think that's a record.
Ready? All right, welcome back. It's 1 o'clock. We are on item 4.
Board of Directors, Special Districts, Public Works Department, Administration Division, overview and presentation of the 2025-2026 proposed Public Works Special Districts budget with direction as needed.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dominic Tyberski, Public Works Department. Have a brief intro to read and then a slideshow. Public Works Department currently oversees the operations for 120 special road districts and about 35 water sewer districts. This includes maintenance district, county service areas, and an assessment district located in various parts throughout the county. The 2025-26 proposed fiscal budgets are intended to provide the level of service to each district in accordance with their individual funding resources. Since the passage of Measure T, we've been able to supplement district funds and ultimately increase the level of service within road districts. Last year, we were able to resurface or treat over 45 miles of roads within various districts. Of that, Measure T funds contributed approximately $2 million, offsetting the cost to the individual districts. The department also administers various grant programs to the water sewer districts. We have recently completed $5.6 million in improvement projects and have another $9.1 million in process. These projects are included in the proposed budget to help improve infrastructure and ensure safe and reliable water with limited to no cost to the ratepayers. With that said, the department recommends approval of the 25-26 proposed special districts budgets, and I'm here if you have any questions. And I also have a slideshow that we can go through the district budgets and the service areas if you wish. All right, thank you. So the county has 33 water sewer districts. All funds are just under $50 million. Of the 118 road districts, the fund or the balance is about just under $18 million. I won't bore you with reading the slides. I don't think anybody wants me to do that here. But I am happy to try to answer any questions that you may have. So looking at the slide, the initial slide, as it shows the districts divided, the districts divided by supervisorial district, you could see that the lion's share is in District 5. And that would be with road and sewer districts. The map before you shows those districts as they are dispersed throughout the supervisorial district. And please, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, I'll just go ahead and continue. So this slide shows all of the, this slide shows all of the road districts within supervisorial District 1. They're shown in the slideshow per district. It shows the lane miles and the budget associated with each district. Continuing on, this map illustrates the District 1 sewer and water districts. And the slide here indicates the number of connections and the budget associated with each of those districts. Next slide, again, a graphic representation of supervisorial District 2 road districts. This is the second part of that. And again, as illustrated on the map, these are the road districts within supervisorial District 2. Any questions? Here's the map indicating the District 2, Supervisorial District 2, water and sewer districts. Second portion of that map. And then again, here is a table indicating the number of connections and the budget associated with those individual districts. Supervisorial District 4, road districts. Graphic representation, followed by the slide indicating the number of paved roads and the budget associated with each district. Supervisorial District 4, water and sewer districts, again, graphically represented. And then shown here on the slideshow indicating the number of connections and the proposed budget. Supervisorial District 5, road districts, graphically represented. And then here is the table, again, indicating each district, the number of paved road miles, and the proposed budget for each district. Supervisorial District 5 road districts, graphically represented. Followed by the table indicating the number of road miles and the allocated budget for this coming year. This one's quite a long list, as we started out saying the lion's share of these districts are in District 5. District 5 road districts, again, graphically represented. Here shown the number of road miles and the budget proposed for the coming fiscal year. Here's another map, again, representing District 5 road districts, followed by the number of miles and budget proposed for this coming fiscal year. I know this is a lot of information. I don't know there would be much value in me reading all of this, so I'm not going to bore you with that, but I do want to give you this overview, and certainly at the end of this, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. Next slide is the District 5 sewer and water districts graphically represented, followed again by a second slide of the same. And then the final two slides are the District 5 sewer water districts, again, shown by district, number of connections, and the anticipated or proposed budget for the coming year. That concludes the slideshow presentation. Be happy to try to answer any questions that you may have.
It's from the board. Supervisor Macaulay.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a couple questions, Dominic, and thank you for the presentation. And we've had a number of conversations in the past about right-sizing districts that perhaps aren't collecting enough to maintain themselves. We've had other conversations around district consolidation. So I'm hopeful you might just speak to that really quick. First, again, those districts that need to be right-sized. I think Deadwood is a good example of those. And then opportunities for consolidation and how we're pursuing that.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. We did have a town hall meeting up at, I believe it was Oakhurst Elementary, engaging some of those folks up in that area. Certainly for economy of scale, the ability to combine these districts is something that would be certainly beneficial to the residents as well as the county. We are pursuing those avenues. We are working with the constituents to attempt to gain support. They have to agree to it and support it. For us to actually implement this, we are continuing outreach efforts. We're looking at opportunities to combine districts, but right now it's in the very early stages of that effort.
Thank you. And one more comment I want to make. when we look at these districts, and a lot of them are underfunded because they've been paying the same rates for the last 20, 30 years, whatever that is. And I think we all recognize that when these districts are underfunded, that the road quality is obviously, going to be an issue. But I think one thing we don't necessarily think about quite as much is our evacuation routes. Our ability to maintain the vegetation within these districts is also sacrificed. And so when we're looking at right sizing some of these districts, when we're looking at, increasing the annual assessment, I would hope that staff is considering these expenses as well, because, it is a matter of public safety. So that is it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Anyone else? Supervisor Wamhaugh.
Yeah, mine is just regarding the difference between two of the road districts in District 1. One of them is Madera Acres and the other one is in the Ranchos MD10. So the budget for MD10 is over $4 million. It has about 70 road miles, but the road miles are very similar in Madera Acres, but have about 1/5 of the budget. And so regarding that discrepancy, because I don't get too many phone calls from folks in Madera Acres, but when I do, it's only about the roads. And I think me and Supervisor Rogers are going to be holding a joint town hall for Country Club / Madera Acres. And I think I would like to put forward some sort of proposal talking about rate increases for those folks if they want to see their roads improved in those areas. Because I'm sure you don't have probably a whole lot of history on the Madera Acres Road, and I'm not looking at Matt. You can stay sitting down. I'm good. But yeah, I would like to see what we can do to fix that disparity.
Absolutely. I can say just in general, and I'm sure you already know this, but we look at a couple of different things when we determine funding or how much we're going to put towards a particular project. And with roads in particular, we use the pavement management system to analyze the condition of the roads. Of course, there's the arterial first policy, so that drives a lot of our decisions. Also, again, as you pointed out, I am not 100% familiar with all of the different districts, but I do know the two that you mentioned, there is a disparity in terms of size, and so you're going to have more funding going into one versus the other. But certainly looking at those rates, looking at what the ratepayers are paying, comparing that to what the pavement management system says in terms of what applications would be appropriate for those roads is something we could certainly do.
Great, thanks.
Absolutely.
Just in a nutshell, a quick basic difference between those two subdivisions is that MD21 is funded by a portion of their property tax, and that goes into their maintenance district, but it's a really super small, it's minutia. It amounts to about 280,000 a year or somewhere in there. And I believe the maintenance district in MD10 has an actual maintenance district fee funding mechanism. So they're two different. They're very different. That's the problem right there in a nutshell.
I know the subdivision where I have a home, it's a maintenance district. There's only 27 homes, and we pay $100 a year.
Right.
So that's not going to go very far towards the roads. Now,
Right.
fortunately, the roads in that community are well built and they're in relatively good shape. But yeah, that's a prime example of that's not going to get you very far.
Right. We've been using a lot of Measure T in that area over there to match and get some work done. We've managed to accomplish about 30 miles of the 60 in the last 16 years. So it's taken quite a bit. Phil Toller and I worked on that side by side for a long time. Thank you. Thank you, Phil.
Anyone else? Seeing none, at this time, I will open the public hearing for this item. Do we have any public comment? I believe we have Dan Metz with his hand raised. Oh, go ahead, come on up too.
So, thank you. Dan Metz here from Oakhurst. I was just curious, would it be possible to get a copy of Mr. Tyberski's presentation? That would be really helpful to us.
Absolutely. Thank you. Next.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrea Uribe, and I'm a land use and transportation policy advocate for Leadership Council. Over the last 2 years, I have held community meetings in Fairmead and Lavinia, attended public outreach events, and met with many of the staff members present here today. Through my time here, I have seen residents advocate for themselves, their neighbors, and the well-being of their communities through various different pathways, providing public comments, signing on to comment letters, and participating in various forms of public engagement opportunities. Residents are passionate about engaging with the county in order to see the necessary changes within the communities be addressed. While the fiscal budgets are vital to the success of adequate planning and implementation of scheduled costs and known procedures, the budget process should also include an adequate public engagement process to understand the priorities and necessities of residents for the upcoming fiscal year. While I understand that the nature of these processes is long and complex, I urge the board to consider ways to obtain public input before the official hearing process and to consider releasing agendas and materials with more time in future years to give interested residents enough time to make arrangements to be able to attend and participate in a process that dictates how their tax dollars will be spent. As a reminder, the county must approve a preliminary budget by the end of June. However, the board does not need to adopt an official budget until October. This means that there's still time to gather and incorporate meaningful feedback into this fiscal year's budget. As you review the budget this week, I urge you to please keep in mind the needs and priorities of two communities within your special districts, Fairmead and Lavinia. Some of their priorities they would like to see set aside within the special district budgets or other budget sections you may see fit, such as the general fund or public ways, include setting aside funds for 2 trash pickup days within the community of Lavinia throughout the 2025-2026 fiscal year, setting aside $150,000 for water meters acquisition and installation within the community of Fairmead, setting aside $200,000 for utility ratepayer assistance program within disadvantaged communities, supporting housing element programs suggested by residents, such as establishing a tenant protection program under Program 5, Homeless Prevention and Housing of the Housing Element to support tenants from negligent landlords and predatory practices of raising the rent multiple times a year, resulting in displacement, or preventing residents from renewing their lease for subsidized housing units. Additionally, leveraging county funds and partnerships, Measure T, to provide street improvements in Avenue 23 and Road 20 in Fairmead and Road 24 in Lavinia. While this list is non-extensive, we continue to elevate these priorities and continue to urge supervisors and staff to take the necessary steps to make improvements within these communities. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Andrea. Anyone else?
None online.
Okay. At this time, I will close public comment and close the public hearing on both items 3A and 4A and move on to discussion item 5A.
County Administration Department, discussion and consideration to adopt a resolution approving the county budgets, including special revenue budgets and special districts budgets for fiscal year 2025-2026.
The discussion from the board. Comments?
I'll move to approve the fiscal budget.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second, but I'll ask for public comment first. I believe,
We have one for Dan Metz.
Dan, you have 3 minutes.
My question is there going to be a presentation on special revenues budget?
The presentation on special revenues was conducted this morning.
Okay, do I have an opportunity to comment on that now, please?
Sure, but for the record, your letter that was emailed to the board was submitted for the record.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, just a comment for Supervisor Rogers. I wanted to say thank you for the well-considered invocation this morning. Maybe we should refer to you as Pastor Rogers. Now I'm representing Sierra Citizens for Sensible Government. I don't believe the forecasted budget for the road revenue makes much sense. The total revenue impact fees hover around 10 to 12 million, and the budget has a sharp increase to 26 million. That's more than 2.5 times the track record. I'm hoping that somebody will be able to explain that. Secondly is there is a $55 million carryover that's mentioned at the top of the page dealing with State Route 41. And there is also a $5 million fund transfer in the 2024 budget. I'm curious, is that 5 million from the 2024 budget a part of that 55 million carryover? And if so, how can that be? The section 14.70.100 provides only for a loan from the county fees to the county fund to the state fund. And so I'm curious how you make that loan, or is that a transfer, or is that a loan? And what are the dates and the requirements that are in 1470.100 that deal with the process of managing such a transfer? And then on the flip side, there is a $215,000 appropriation for maintenance in 2025. And the codes do not permit any of the road impact fees for being used for maintenance. So I'm curious what that means. Perhaps I'm misreading it or something to that effect. And then there is the 20 million that's in the carry forward from the county roads. Is that being used to pay for State Route 41 projects? I'm a little unsure. Thank you.
Matt, do you want to respond to some of that?
Sure, Madam Chair, I'm happy to attempt to try and respond and address those. And certainly, Mr. Metz is welcome to contact our office as well for any additional details. So I'll again try to address all of them. On the first point about the budget, on those things. So in this current budget year, we estimated revenues coming in right around that $10 million mark. And again, in the proposed budget before you, we're showing that 26 million. That's based on actuals that we have collected in this current fiscal year budget, 24-25, which is at 26.2 million we have collected within the fee program already this fiscal year. So hence the drastic uptick and increase in that. We've seen that all being generated out of the growth that's occurring out on the 41 corridor. So we feel pretty confident on that revenue projection, and now it's budgeted in this current proposal before you. Again, we had 10 million estimated for revenue. We're at 26.2 million already this fiscal year. The 5 million is not incorporated into that rollover. And so just for that clarification to Mr. Metz's question on that. And let me see here. Again, I'm trying to address these. As far as the budget and fund transfers and those aspects, so there was a budget item that went to the board to authorize the transfer of that $6+ million. That did not occur. You'll know there was no item before the board because, as Mr. Metz has already described, it does require a loan and a repayment of any funds borrowed from either fund to the other fund. There's two funds that make up our road impact fee program, the 41 projects and then the county road projects or county regional projects. So the funds are deposited into those accounts. They're broken out per the adopted fee program. And if we are able to borrow and loan to either fund, but again, that's an action before the board on a loan and repayment of that. Full disclosure, the intent, and I think we've been clear on a number of different discussion topics in regards to the 41 project. We envision all of our collected fees in the road impact fee program We do envision that at some point in the not too distant future, we'll be before this board to roll those funds, in essence, from the county regional pot into the 41 improvement through a loan process and a repayment thing. When we're looking at a $80 million, $75 million construction project, total project costs near the 150 million, that doesn't happen overnight. And so we are going to look to have those funds all moved into the 41 project. And again, that'll all be tracked. It'll have a loan doc and repayment of those per the county ordinance that's there. So again, we continue to scrape every penny we can to try to get 41 off the ground, and we're very, very close. You know, we've got 26.9, little over $26.9 million in federal dollars funds already, plus the road impact fee balance that we have to date. And our enhanced infrastructure financing districts, right, we're sitting at about 86 million all told, funding available for programming towards that project. Again, it still takes action by this board because we still got to do that loan doc and those things. So, and we've made some monumental strides in getting that project ready to list. We've purchased a number of sections of right-of-way for it. So again, I hope I tried to answer most or all of Mr. Metz's questions. And again, Dan's welcome to reach out to the office and we'll try to get him all the answers he needs.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any additional public comment?
None online.
I'll close public comment and bring it back. We have a first and a second, roll call vote.
Supervisor Rogers.
Yes.
Supervisor Poitras.
Yes.
Supervisor Wamhaugh.
Yes.
Supervisor McCauley.
Yes.
Chair Gonzalez.
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, that concludes our meeting. We will adjourn.